Welcome to another episode of Authentically Detroit, broadcasting live from the Lower East Side here in the city, powered by the Eastside Community Network and sponsored by none other than the Ford Foundation, now a content partner to the new bridgedetroit.com. I'm Orlando Bailey.
And I'm Donna Davidson.
Thank you for listening in and supporting our efforts to build a platform of authentic voices for real people on the east side of Detroit. We want you to like, rate, and subscribe to our podcast on whatever platforms you listen to us on, because we drop a new episode every week. So turn on those notifications. So all February long, we are taking the time to honor Black history with Detroit roots. This episode, we are diving deep into the labor movement here in the city of Detroit and how unions negotiated for overall community well-being far beyond their employment contracts. Joining us today is Savana Brewer. Savana is a former labor activist turned social worker serving as the Director of Community Organizing and Planning at Eastside Community Network. Also joining us is Jerry King. Jerry is a UAW member that is also the president of the AFL-CIO Consistency Group, founded by Bayard Rustin and A. Randolph after the victories of the Voter Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act. Savana and Jerry, welcome to Authentically Detroit.
Hello.
Welcome. Greetings, everyone.
Greetings.
Greetings. We're so happy to have you. Look, I have a small confession. Everybody knows that I used to work very closely with Savana, and for the life of me, I could not say her last name. Did I get your last name right?
You got it.
I did. I won't try to say it again because I will butcher it. But we always laugh because I can never say her last name. Okay, I'll leave it at there. Happy Black History Month, everybody. With all that's going on in the world, what does this month mean to you? Are you doing anything special? Are you reading anything, watching anything this month in recognition of Black history? How are you all commemorating Black history? Savana, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so I am really just celebrating by pulling together family and friends. And number one, recognizing that we are Black history, we're making history right now. As well as I recently hosted a Sisterhood Saturday Zoom session with Black women and women who love our Black men or our Black children. And so it is turning into a monthly session to really just come together and celebrate cultural femininity and connectedness. And that's how I'm celebrating.
I love to hear it. You're such a force. Go ahead, Jerry. Yeah.
So for me, my role as president of the state and the Metro Detroit A. Philip Randolph Institute, it's every day for me that I'm fighting for inequality and to identify opportunities for our people to move forward. I got a chance to watch Judas and the Messiah the other night, and honestly, it really hit me and impacted me because I was ashamed that I did not know the story of Fred Hampton, in the level of death and the leadership that 21-year-old man that he had. And, here I am, an activist. I'm 50 years old this year. This last year I became 50. And to see where he was at 21 and the fact of that we have not done all the necessary things to prepare our kids to participate in this struggle at that level. Here I am catching up to leadership of a man like that. And it's just a struggle. We got a lot of work to do to get our people in position to understand the historical and the generational struggle that we have to prepare our people to move forward. And so it's just every day that we have to do what we do.
Thank you for that. That's actually really deep. Yeah. Donna, what about you? Anything new this week?
Well, not new this week, but new. I don't even know how new it is, but I've really been immersing myself in Black Detroit history. Really trying to understand the significance of Black Detroit. We didn't just become Black because white people left. We became Black because we established power. We had developed economic means. And whenever you have that happen, and in America, whenever you have Black people advance, you have resistance from white people. And the resistance in Detroit took the form of suburbanization. It took the form of police repression. and political repression, which led to a rebellion. And then it took the form of us having a Black mayor and decades of resistance to Black political leadership that was pretty much dismantled through years of intentional behavior. And so what I'm trying to do is really understand and lift up those people who settled here, came here in the Great Migration, in the first Great Migration, from, you know, sharecropping, from situations where they could not vote, and the power they exercised in this community in such a short period of time, despite, you know, from the 1920s until today, you have had people saying Detroit people, Black people are fraudulent voters, that Black people don't have the requisite knowledge and capacity to self-govern. And then finally, I get really excited when I understand the impact of unionization in the building of Black power in the city of Detroit, the
Yeah.
uniqueness of the UAW and how Black people entered into the UAW to create really a movement that pushed beyond the city of Detroit. So the way I see it is we've got to really celebrate our city. You know, people are calling about Detroit, come to Detroit saying Detroit is really cool because whatever it is that they have. But I really think that Detroit's coolness rests in the roots and rests in actually the roots of Black excellence and Black achievement and Black people working together to overcome over a century, a couple centuries actually, of racism.
You know, it's so funny is that you brought up, you know, the great migration, I have been on this ancestry journey. I think our listeners know that I've been on this ancestry journey, and I was reading a book, and I can't remember the name of the book right now. I'm reading a few right now. I'm a book club junkie, so I'm a part about 3 of them right now. But somebody, you know, sort of reframed what the Great Migration was and didn't call it the Great Migration, but like Black folks fleeing, like refugees to the north, fleeing violence, fleeing for their lives. And it's, you know, and when you put it in that context, because when you talk about the Great Migration, I don't really get the full picture of what Jim Crow South was and how dangerous it was for our ancestors. But when you talk about, you know, fleeing for safety, fleeing for jobs and economic power in a city like Detroit, Chicago, Philly, you know, all of these places, it really does something. So I've been doing a lot of reading of, you know, Black authors on, you know, history, economic development and power, but I've also been being very intentional around showing love, abundant love, especially to Black women. So I love it. Y'all are history makers. Herstory. Listen, it's time for Fresh Off the Press news that we are thinking about. If you have pieces that you want discussed on Authentically Detroit, you can hit us up on our socials at Authentically Detroit on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, or you can email us at authenticallydetroit@gmail.com. Donna, Fresh Off the Press.
Want to fix chronic absenteeism problem in Detroit schools? Start with transportation. And this is reported by Lori Higgins for Chalkbeat Detroit, which is a content partner with Bridge Detroit. And I was really excited to read this because most of the time when we look at chronic absenteeism, we try to figure out what's wrong with parents and students. And we always situate this in terms of brokenness in our community and some type of social disorder. We rarely look at the structural factors that contribute to school attendance. When we close neighborhood schools and students have to travel farther and farther to get to schools. And at times we've had attendance policies that if you show up wearing the wrong clothes, you can't go to class, or if you show up late, if your bus gets you there late, or if you're dealing with problems, you can't go to class. And then when you couple that with homelessness, and when you couple that with some of the many problems that we have, you're going to have absenteeism. And as with all social justice issues, we should start with structures and then end up with people, but we always end up blaming our people. So this was really great. Wayne State University did a study, and the researchers have looked at what really goes into absenteeism. They find that transportation is a big thing, right? People can't get to schools. And even when you talk about parent involvement, I remember working with one school in a prior job, and we had after school programs there, and the kids couldn't go to the after school program because there was no transportation from the school to their homes, which are far away. But the other issue is that parents could not participate in the school. They talk about parent involvement because parents didn't have transportation to the school. So this really got me excited. I actually had an opportunity to attend a community meeting with Dr. Beatty today, and I asked him, "Are you looking at this study?"
What
Would
did he
they
say
look at?
when you asked him that?
Well, he's a great politician, so of course, I asked him about the structural factors, and he said, "Oh, I think we're changing that. Do you have any evidence that we aren't?" But I'm really thinking that we need to be bigger than that evidence. I want to actually call upon the Detroit Public Schools and every single charter school in our district to come up with mechanisms to make it easy for students to attend school. When you have students who are homeless or couch surfing and not living in a place where they have running water or access to washing machines in their home, their school uniform might be dirty, okay? And you don't want a student to not go to school because they don't have a clean uniform. It just doesn't make any sense to me. So that's my story. And I'm
Donna, can I
excited.
ask you this question? I want to ask you this. I don't know if it was the latest State of the City address. When I say latest, I mean the 2020 State of the City address, where Mayor Duggan announced a plan for busing. And what happened with that, Donna?
I mean, that
What
plan looked like the people mover. It looked like the queue line. It was going to take people from one very limited place to another very limited place, taking kids on the circuit. So drop your kids off at this school, and they will transport your kids to this school and this school and this school. And when they're done, you can pick them up from the Northwest Activity Center. Now, my granddaughter is 3. I don't have any children in school right now, but I promise you this: when I drop my kid off at school, I don't want them taken somewhere else. And you know what happens when you're a kid, at least it happened when I was a kid. I don't know if it's still happening, but if you are in another kid's school grounds, fights happen, right? You can't mix school children like that. There's turf and there's all of this other stuff. So I think that rather than us ever getting to a serious problem or a concern or thought around easing transportation barriers, you end up having things like that. And the other thing is that this was designed to remove barriers to charter schools and remove the distinction between charter schools and public schools, traditional public schools. So you have to also look at what is the motivation here for that. So it may be still going on. I don't think it was utilized that much, but it doesn't solve the systemic problem of limited transportation. It does not increase access for parents to get to schools.
And the other structural problems. One of the things that stuck out to me in Lori's piece for us was also, the health concerns as a barrier. And we know that we've done a lot of work, even at ECN, around social determinants of health, and how the East Side is home to one of the biggest populations for asthma, type 2 diabetes, and being overweight, obesity. And so when we talk about socially determined health, where a child lives matters. And it is a matter of their health. It is a matter of whether or not they will grow up with asthma. It's a matter of whether or not they will experience or come in contact with lead. And so for so long, we've had punitive measures against structural inequities that our kids and parents face without making room for or planning for the dismantling of those structural inequities. And so I think Lori and the Wayne State University is onto something. I'm glad she called out transportation, but that health concerns piece, especially in the middle of a pandemic, especially when we have a moratorium on water, but those water costs are still piling up. We're going to have even more of an issue to talk about once we achieve some level of normalcy, whatever that looks like.
All right. So Jerry, you're not quite my age, but you're close enough that you remember did you grow up in Detroit?
Absolutely.
Okay. Do you remember walking to school?
Yes, Peck
We used to
Elementary. I
Yeah,
remember
walk
my
to
mom
elementary
walking me
school.
halfway the first day.
Back in my day, we walked to school, walked home, ate lunch, and walked back to school. My school was 3 blocks from my home. There was no absenteeism. My mother wanted me out the house. And Orlando says he walked us to school too. You go, Orlando. You're not that young, right? But you know, when they decided to close neighborhood schools, and there was a decision to close certain neighborhood schools, and it was not always a good decision. I was working at Vanguard. They closed every single school in the North End neighborhood, and then said, okay, well, you guys can go to school at Golightly. Well, Golightly was a middle income school serving a middle income population. You had low income kids supposed to go to this school. That school did not want the kids from the North End, I promise you. But also the parents couldn't get there. The students couldn't get there without a bus. And you had this decision that we're going to create a marketplace of schools, not placing a value in neighborhood schools. There used to be a concept of beacon schools and the schools serving as a community center. Everybody in my neighborhood went to the same school. We knew each other, we knew each other's parents, and it created a sense of community that has been lost and dismantled. Now we have people going in every place. And the other thing is we have a hyper concentration of schools in downtown Detroit and in the Midtown area, and you have fewer schools in some neighborhoods. When I was working in Brightmoor, you had one school consolidated from 6 schools, one elementary school. So I'm excited that they're looking at this, but I hope the policy change is not just busing, but also an awareness that we need to bring schools back into some of our neighborhoods.
Savannah and Jerry, do you have anything to add?
I just want to, you know, when you talk about transportation as a whole, massive transportation, it's a big problem here regionally. And if you go into, Detroit started to lay massive transportation in 1800s and 1920s, and it started to be undermined in about 1952. And the auto companies played a major role in forming a group called the National Transportation Corporation that had lobbied over a period of time to keep Detroit away from, well, nationally, away from massive transportation. And so there's some structural pieces, historical pieces that have undermined the growth of a city like Detroit because we don't have truly progressive and robust massive transportation. And it impacts us and it helps sustain income inequality because we can't get to work, you know, from one place to another. And that impacts the children as well when their parents are struggling. And so it's just so many factors that accumulate into the impacts of this transportation piece as a whole.
I agree, Jerry. I think also too, just when thinking about some of the factors and just the effects of it, some children go to school to eat. And if I cannot get to school to eat, what am I going to do, right? I may live in a neighborhood where there is, you know, a lack of food affordability or accessibility. And so where does that leave me as a child? And so I guess it's really a lingering question. I wonder if, you know, school board officials, as well as other organizations have really taken that into consideration as we talk about transportation. And I don't know if there could be some, you know, partnerships or programs that not only get children to school, but also ensure their parents are able to get to work.
Outstanding. So I'm excited by this research. I think that structures are important, understanding transportation, understanding how all the systems interconnect. And certainly kids go to school for 2 things. And, you know, one of them is, well, 3 things that I've seen. One of them is food. The other one is sometimes heat. And the other one is sometimes access to caring adults. And when you remove those things from kids, we can have, you know, safety. And when you remove all of those things from kids, good things don't happen. And we only focus on academics and don't look at the holistic whole child. Orlando, you have a story?
I do have a story, but I want to put a button on this by saying that let's continue to be engaged on a national level. News broke yesterday that President Biden wants to reinstate mandated testing for children. And we know, as we have said many times on this show, that testing isn't always the best form to gauge whether or not a student is learning, especially marginalized students or Black kids. It is rumored that Michigan will try to not test this year, but once again, I want to just implore, and we talked about, becoming a little too comfortable after an election. We have to stay vigilant. We have to pay attention, and we need to be calling Joe Biden out on this.
Yep.
Uh,
Agreed.
period.
I've got a
I
list.
do. I do have a story, Donna, fresh off the press in Changing Gross Points. Subtle racism gives way to political extremism. This is by Madeline Halbert for Bridge Michigan, a content partner to Bridge Detroit. All right, so Madeline did some reporting in the 5 Gross Point communities and follow around a woman, Ann Vanker, specifically, who is a former executive. She's 55. She is a native of Grosse Pointe, and she has a book club, and the book club is now being used really essentially, if I can glean from Madeline's reporting, my words, not hers, as a breeding ground for just political polarization and the spread of conspiracies and mistruths, untruths. And one of the things that is, that is striking to me is this ongoing fight to really essentially preserve white supremacy in the Grosse Pointes and elitism in the Grosse Pointes. And it's a fight that I don't think the Grosse Pointes are going to win. Data is showing as the years progress that Grosse Pointe is becoming a little bit more blue, a little bit more Black. We have made news within the last year of Grosse Pointe Park having its first African-American city council person. The first one last year in 2020. We're still talking about first. And we, Grosse Pointe and the Grosse Pointe Harper Woods chapter of the NAACP. But what we see, though, are remnants of that cogent racism that has existed for decades. And it was a historian in an article that brought up that before an animal dies out completely from being injured, it makes the most fuss, it makes the most noise. And he is positing that Grosse Pointe, radical conspiracy, right-winged folks, bigoted folks are, going down screaming. One of the things that really strikes me is that equity and equal rights for Black people, for gay people, and other marginalized groups is a threat to that privilege, that inherent privilege that people have been carrying for years and years. And it's not oppression, it's just a perceived threat. And from that perceived threat, you get erected borders at the Detroit border and Grosse Pointe border, and plants and walls. You get marches. You get a KKK flag being hanged in a window next to an African-American neighbor in Grosse Pointe Park. I mean, really? Listen, this is not a fight that you will win. Crazy Grosse Pointe racist people, this is not a fight that you will win. Donna can speak to, and Savannah can speak to, the ongoing partnerships that Eastside Community Network in the city of Detroit has going in the Grosse Pointe parks with the Grosse Pointe City Council and Grosse Pointe Woods and Grosse Pointe Farms, and the working together to achieve, some common goals along the Mack Avenue corridor, the Grosse Pointe Park mayor. I mean, the movement that is happening will not be stopped. And it's just a shame, and it's sad. The preservation of this elitism can't go to the parks. Nobody can go to the school. Hiring private investigators to see if Black kids really live in the Grosse Pointes while they attend schools. Listen, y'all, it's getting played. Yeah. And I thought it was a story that was well done, and that something that we should keep our eye on, because I know that ever since Trump was in office and since he's left, that there is a dangerous and a radicalized minority that can really impose a threat, especially on Black residents in the Grosse Pointes. And we saw that with that KKK flag. Donna?
You see with Jadana Dingus, who is the
Yeah.
woman, um, here's the story. She found a gas can full of gas in her recycle bin and went to the police. And the police said, oh, we can't do anything, put a camera up. So she put a camera up, and her next door neighbor, who she, I think, believed had put the gas can there because there was a similar gas can on his lawn, went into his closet, I suppose, and pulled out his favorite flag, the KKK flag, and put it up in the window. Because let's be honest, okay, let's say you make me mad. I can't find a KKK flag. I mean, I wouldn't even know where to get one. But
I wouldn't have it.
This man had one. And the police officer who was quoted in a newspaper article this day said, well, I guess he got fed up and he'd had enough, ignoring and negating the reality that she had complained to the police about what had happened to her just prior to that. So the good thing about Jadana is Jadana is nobody to mess with. That's all I'm gonna say. You know,
she ain't.
She is a person who will stand her ground and make it known who she is and what she's not playing with. And she knows a lot of people. And so there was actually a march yesterday for racial justice in Grosse Pointe, on Sunday in Grosse Pointe, in support of her. And so I agree with you. History is going to change things. Donald Trump was like the last gasp of idiots. And we see that Joe Biden won, he got the most votes in both Grosse Pointe Park and the city of Grosse Pointe. And I think Trump got maybe 9 more votes than Biden in the farms. But we're talking about really close elections. We're talking about a changeover, not just in the race, but also in the thinking. We published a very strong stand against racism in a shared collective effort, and we got the buy-in of the city managers in Grosse Pointe Farms and Grosse Pointe, as well as the council people in Grosse Pointe Park. So I agree with you, change is afoot, but we have to keep fighting, right? Because even as those change and the cosmetic people say they love us, the structures of racism that we just talked about have not gone away. And you just talked about testing, right? Testing is legalized racism. What you do is you replace Black with a test score, and what you say is, okay, we're reducing funding and we are taking over these schools because we're concerned that the students here don't test like the students in other places. And if you were that concerned about students not testing as well, why don't you make sure they have housing? Why don't you make sure they have food and heat in their homes? Rather than putting the burden of equality on a test score, why don't we put it in the safety net that we're all supposed to be investing in? And I just don't see that happening. So I'm glad that we have these marches. I'm a little bit cynical about the marches. I need some policy change to back up the marches. And that's why I'm so excited to have, to even learn about bargaining for the common good, because, whoa, we're not in this alone. We actually have unions that are partnering with the community saying, how do we work together on this? And I'm going to tell you the truth. It feels to me like we are bringing forward the former coalition between civil rights activists and union activists in the new millennium and creating this partnership. Is that what you're seeing, Jerry?
Absolutely. Well, it's not something really new, right? Mm-hmm. It's just becoming more formalized. If you go back to the Great Depression, it was the UAW and coalition members that fought for and put people back in their houses when they were getting evicted during the Great Depression. Mm-hmm. And it's called social unionism. Collective bargaining doesn't stand without the general public supporting us. Because we're only here because there's a law, the National Labor Relations Act and other things that have been enacted that forces the powers to be to look us in the eye and see us as equals at the table. And then the laws to mandate what we agree upon is fulfilled. So it's important that labor always connects to the community and that we create value in their space. And where we work and where we live, we should not just be coming into a neighborhood and extracting our wealth, nor the company, without reciprocating and being concerned about the needs of that community. And that's one of my goals, and one of the goals that labor leaders that support me is that we connect to the community and let them know that we're here and their fight is our fight, and that we need each other and we need the corporations. So it should be equitable exchange between all. And so bargaining for the common good is a concept that I just really formulated, learned about maybe 2 years ago, when my boss, Vice President Cindy Estrada, UAW, she sent out something that said, "Hey, you guys take a look at this and read this." And so I can't articulate her path in moving in this, but the thought, and when you do the history and open your mind to a my dad says the mind that has been expanded to a new thought can never return to its original size. And so taking in this knowledge and learning about groups like SEIU and other groups across the nation, that when they go to the table, they're partnering with community groups, faith, other groups in that community, and are looking at the impact of that company working in that area and the needs of that community when they sit down at the table and they bargain. So it's not just about bargaining for the workforce's well-being, but there are some critical issues and impacts by corporations and just needs of the community that need to be looked at in an equitable space by all concerned parties. And so this keeps the labor union involved when after the contract's over with, they just don't walk away. There's a constant engagement with community and looking for and seeking fulfillment of equitable opportunities and exchanges between all stakeholders. And at the end of the day, we all need each other. And so I encourage the community to get involved and learn about bargaining for the common good. Because if the community don't stand and educate itself around it, how can you help us leverage that dialogue in these public spaces? It's all about all of us. Because wealth, just like this real quick, I believe that capitalism is great, but it should just be a tool of democracy to enhance the betterment of mankind. It should never enslave us or deprive us. It only is a tool to change society and to keep society working for the better good of humankind, not the way it's being used right now. We need to change that dynamic. It should just be a tool. Democracy comes first. Capitalism should be a tool to encourage the rapid change for the benefit of those stakeholders in the community, never enslave us.
I will say that capitalism without democracy and without unions is always going to enslave us. In fact, it literally did enslave us, right? Until we had the right to vote, until we had certain rights, whether we were called slaves or not.
We were the capital.
Unfettered capitalism is really, the financialization of government. Government starts working for banks and government starts working for corporations, which are their customers, and people become the tools for capitalism and the subjects for capitalism. So you're right. You got to flip that script. Now, Savannah, you worked with unions, you worked in automotive plants, and now you are working in the community. Where do you see the intersection and how does this flow for you?
Oh, great question.
Oh, definitely. My work with the union, I worked for an independent power supplier plant for 8 years until that facility closed its doors on about 600 workers. Through that, I was able to go back to school, which landed me and connected me to Wayne State. And that is how I became connected with Detroit. My work within the union, I served as our recording secretary for our executive board, and I also served as the civil and human rights chairperson. And the work that we did within the community really just fascinated me. I am a 4th generational UAW member, and I remember being a little girl standing on the picket lines with my father and my grandfather. And so it's kind of always been in me to just have this activism inside. But I really felt that, whether we were packaging food boxes to take to families who were in need of food, or donating clothes, and coordinating those, a clothing drive, just really helping in the community really made me feel as though what I was doing, my role in the in the plant, even though that wasn't the work that I wanted to do. The work that I did with the UAW really kind of motivated me to keep going and not quit. There would be days that I would be literally crying that I did not want to go to work. But as I became more involved with the union, number one, understanding the impact that the union had, not just with my physical job and being there, but the job that it had over the years and the impact that it could have moving forward, was enough for me to say, I'm at least interested in attending my union meetings. And just how it really ties into my community work now. I think that those partnerships are so important. I think it's 100% important to understand how unions support workers' rights and really understand that it's not just about UAW jobs or SEIU jobs or teacher, unionized jobs, but it's about workers' rights all the way around. And I think that once we begin to come together and have that same uniform understanding, that it will be easier to understand how bargaining collectively is for the greater good.
Wow. Oh, that's awesome. So I work with you and I learned a little bit about you. I have a question though. I look at unions and I've been reading this book about Detroit, all these books about Detroit and the way the UAW changed over time. But in 1980, you had unions, the UAW and other unions vote to elect Ronald Reagan. And even in 2020, you had many people who belonged to unions who were voting for Donald Trump, despite the anti-worker stance of these presidents. And I wonder if there are times when racism interferes with the fight for workers' rights. Like, I want to have my rights as a worker, but I don't want these Black people to also have rights. Or I wonder the extent to which the coalition between unions and civil rights workers and now people who are fighting for racial justice in this new millennium, how does that impact some of the internal dynamics? Because I'm absolutely in agreement with you, but I don't think that unions could have been harmed as much as they have been in the past 20, 30 years without the participation of some union members who have sold out.
It's always some. Geez, Jerry.
Well, I guess, there's always an element that wants to hold on to privilege. And,
Yeah.
and if we look at structurally and institutionally across this nation, in all structures, that element is prevalent.
Yeah.
Having those hard conversations about those internal things are something that the membership has to have with itself. And there has to be leaders that are willing to challenge those conversations. It does start with education, though. I've got an opportunity to teach a class that the CWA put together, Les Leopold, that talks about reversing runaway inequality. And through that platform, we talk about structural and institutional racism and how those things have been leveraged against us by the powers to be that watch labor make the significant changes in the 30s and in the 60s. All right. And so they have studied us and infiltrated as far as the tools that we built and used those tools against labor. And you have to understand, we got what I call they, them, and those. The original they were those who didn't have any laws, didn't have anything to stand out and stood out on faith and fought and lost their life to create the leverage to get the people to the ballot box to enact policy and laws to give us the right to collective bargaining. And so you got they, them became the local leaders, and then they became those and the international leaders. We're generations and generations away from that. We are no longer, and can we eat off of the plate of what Bayard Rustin, A. Philip Randolph, Walter Reuther, and Martin Luther King accomplished. It was a coalition of labor, faith, and community that got us the Voting Rights and the Civil Rights Act. And since then, we have eaten off that plate to there's no more enamel left on the plate. And so it's for every member to take the time to educate themselves and move forward. The beautiful thing is that there's growth in unions. There's new people to the table that have the right, that have the need to fight for more. And we have to engage those new members, educate those new members, and we have to reach out and organize. that fight for 15. A lot of people say those people don't deserve $15 an hour because my order is wrong. And I ask people every day, have you went to a restaurant and seen that it was understaffed? And they say yes. Well, I say the most important part of a grievance for us is a work standard grievance. Believe me, McDonald's has a work standard, but there's no union to enforce it. That management team starts off understaffed, keeps it understaffed because it generates additional profit. Nobody's there to fight to make sure those workers are taken care of. So you got somebody doing 2 and 3 people's job. There's no wonder why your order's wrong.
Yeah.
They're mad, all right? They're mad and nobody's there to stand up for them. So it's in our best interest to organize and support that no matter where we at, never snob anybody because we're making more money. Those people get scheduled on a whim, not based on seniority. There's no structure or stability in their homes, okay? Because the work boss can treat them any way they want to, and they can give them a rubber spatula to flip a hamburger that after heat gets pliable, right? And they aren't even buying them the right tools because it costs too much money. And so they're asking somebody to go to the store to get a $1 loaf of bread, and they're only giving them 80 cents. They need a union to fight for them so they can have dignity, so they can have a pathway. And then when we get them organized, we can go in and educate them because the school system is not educating about civic responsibility. Through the union, even though I come from a union family, it was the UAW program that educated me and taught me my responsibility to maintain what I got and advance it through civic engagement. And once we get inside that workplace, we have a place to meet, to talk, to pass out literature and move them to another space to continue that education. And people keep turning their nose at that, but we need to bring them brothers and sisters involved and bring them up because there's 65 million people of them. There's more of them than it is of us under the umbrella of collective bargaining. We need to leverage, move those people into a shared space so that they can go vote on shared values so we can turn this country into what it needs to be for the people, not for the very rich, the 1%ers who do not contribute at all. And that's what we got to do.
You know, when we used
You
to
talk about, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
real quickly, you know, there was a time we talked about the rich people as makers and workers as takers. But when COVID-19 shut everything down, we have a new designation. We call people essential workers.
Essential.
Because we understood nothing could happen without these essential workers being, you know, doing what they do. Savannah, in your work with the community, are you interfacing with a lot of essential workers who are impacted negatively by COVID-19 and who don't have the resources they need for their families?
So in some instances, yes, actually, one resident that we work with was teaching and at first was laid off, you know, as schools shut down and everything. And since then has now lost her job, even though it was crucial for her to, you know, have her internet and all those kind of different Wi-Fi services up to date to be able to continue with working and teaching remotely, but then became laid off. And so now I'm, you know, kind of understanding her situation as that plays out and as, you know, COVID is still very present. And keep going, ask me again.
No, I'm just thinking through the essential workers, the fact that people who are making minimum wage or working very low wage jobs really have a hard time taking care of their families, as Jerry mentioned, and yet we call them essential. So don't just give me a name, give me $15 an hour, since you now see that this economy, this world cannot function without the input and the labor of a group of people who are so routinely disrespected. I want to say one more thing real quickly. If anybody in most jobs can go to work and have a bad day, we hold the lowest paid people to the highest standards in terms of workplace attitude. You're dealing with disrespectful bosses, problems at home, but you got to have a smile on your face. And if you don't get it exactly right, I want to use my power to punish you.
Right.
And that's that whole issue of privilege where I want to maintain my privilege over other people that you were just referring to, because it makes us feel powerful to talk down to this person who's an essential worker. One of the biggest things is people don't want people who are essential workers, people who are lower paid, to be at their level. If I'm getting paid $16 an hour, I'll be damned if I want a McDonald's worker making $15 an hour, because it makes me less exceptional.
I mean, it's the craziest argument to have, this argument of the talented 10th or exceptionability, in addition to give me the $15 an hour, give me full-time employment. Because one of the craziest dichotomies or just situations in this country is how our health insurance is linked directly to full-time employment. And so not only so you change the rhetoric. So I'm no longer an unskilled worker or a low-wage worker. I'm an essential worker, but I got to put my life on the line every day to go to work, right? Part-time, potentially being exposed to COVID, and I still don't have insurance to take care of myself if I get sick. You know what I'm saying? Like it is the most asinine system that we have, one of the most asinine systems that we have in America. Savannah, what say you?
I think also, as we talk about, essential work, and just in my experience in working with community members, there are so many concerns in just different situations that folks are going through, whether it is, a need for housing, or I may be trying to get to work because my work is essential, but I don't necessarily know where I stand right now with, an eviction, or, the crisis that there is right now for shelter, or maybe my mental health with the fear of contracting COVID, like you said, Orlando. I have to get to work, right, to feed my family and provide for my household, but maybe it's not paying me enough. And I think that they, some, employers gave like a $2 pay increase, but that still may not be enough to suffice and hold me and my family, as my children may be at home now, or, it just may not be enough to keep me going and to keep me even encouraged to do my job well, as I'm facing so many other different obstacles. But my work is essential, but it's not my life, or it's not my livelihood.
Right. Exactly.
Mm. Mm.
That's the reason I like the term the common good, because it really speaks to this concept that there should be, we use the term inclusive social well-being to describe sustainability.
Yeah.
This concept that everybody should be included in a state of well-being. My well-being is not impacted because you're also doing well. I mean, it's not harmed, it's actually improved because you're also doing well. We have so many people who are homeless and semi-homeless and dealing with so many situations. And, then the homelessness creates health issues. I think we have to get back to that. And I'm excited about the work together on this. Now, one of the things that has come up recently has been Fiat Chrysler and the expansion of Fiat Chrysler in our community. We were promised 5,000 jobs. Detroiters to get 5,000 jobs. How can you turn this down? So the city did everything possible to bring Fiat Chrysler to the table to get these 5,000 jobs, even ignoring some of the health consequences of their expansion. And Jerry, in addition to, you have a lot of hats. You're with the A. Philip Randolph Institute, with the UAW, and you're also chairing the Neighborhood Advisory Council. Is that correct?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, so you helped to negotiate that. Can you give us an update on what's going on with that and how this plays into negotiating for the common good, and how you are working with the community around this?
Yeah, because people don't know.
This doesn't really work into the common good because it's not during our deliberations or our dialogue. But the fact is, of me being a union member and a stakeholder in this community, it was, definitely important that when I heard about this, and that we, number one, went in as far as A. Philip Randolph Institute, and for Martin Luther King birthday, we had an event called Where Do We Go From Here? Community or Chaos, where we introduced that community to their role in the opportunity to play in a community benefit should that community be looked at. And we got to understand, people have a vision for our community, and it's not always our vision. And so our job was to go in as a community organization and educate and bring in the other stakeholders that were doing work on the Lower East Side of Detroit, which is one of the most strongest neighborhoods I've ever found that has been reimagining itself for 30, 40 years. And to tie into that and bring those players to the table to educate that community to their role if somebody looked at, and as we saw, it was announced that FCA was expanding over there. And so we educated them, we shared information about opportunities so that when we talk about community benefit, it's not just a merry-go-round in the park, that we put in systems and programs that create change. And, there's some great things happening, the demolition over 300 houses. But there's some things that we need to constantly look at, the environmental impact. We were forced into a situation where we didn't have 90 days to do our due diligence. And what we were put in this situation was to make a decision in 60 days, or the company could walk away because they had whatever their other pressing issues are. You spending $2.6 billion. I don't think that you only got 60 days to get something done. Well in advance, you can bring it to us in that time. But I'm at that table. I don't know what those negotiations are, but I know I'm a community stakeholder and I have a voice. And I'm here to uplift the rest of the voices beyond my voice so that everybody's heard. And so the thing is, we only had 60 days to do demolition. When you look at it, you think, oh, they're taking 2 engine plants and transforming them into a assembly plant. Tomatoes. Well, if you look at the pollution that came out of the Jefferson North Assembly Plant, was 12,300 tons of VOCs, all right, over a 20-year span. And when you look at the data from Eagle over the 2 MAC plants under 1 permit, there was only 64 tons, all right? And so they say state-of-the-art equipment. That's something we really need to look at, because if you just look at an apple and an apple, 600, so the average was 600 and some odd tons for JNAP. And then the average for the MAC plants was 3 tons a year. All right, let's look at the average over 20 years. So now we're going to the assembly of a vehicle, which is great. We need the jobs, but you're talking possibly doubling that pollution. So if you put in state-of-the-art equipment and you mitigate it by 30%, you're still talking about 400 tons versus 3 tons. That's a whole leap. And we need to do some more talking. We need to really understand what the scope of this is. And there needs to be some things done to help this community mitigate that type of heavy impact on the air that we breathe. Because I'll be here for another 30 years, hopefully, breathing this air. And those people who don't have the income I have, what are they going to do to protect themselves?
So an agreement was signed. The Neighborhood Advisory Committee signed an agreement with Fiat Chrysler. Is Fiat Chrysler holding up their end of the deal? And do members of the NAC stand by the signing of that agreement? It's been some months now. How do you feel, and how do other members feel? If you
we had a lot of things that came into play. You have theory, which is in the agreement, and then you have application, right, and implementation. And so I understand that it takes time, and sometimes theory has to be shifted and shaped with reality, right, of implementation. So here we are now, then we had COVID hit, all right? And so there has been some things delegated to the city government that, because they play a role, and they build community, not cars. And so we have been in dialogue about getting data, raw data, to support their deliverables to this community benefit agreement. And there have been some issues with obtaining that data in a timely manner. And so there is a new team in place, and that new team has, since we've met, start to disseminate that data. And so I am going to be open-minded, and I look forward to the continuous dialogue and negotiations to make sure we get that data so that the NAC and the community can have an audit trail. And that's why we're reaching out to community stakeholders, because we want to put forth a team that can do some random sampling of those deliverables. All right.
Well, I can appreciate that, because, one of the things that I know Donna and I both, and we talked a lot about this when I was still at ECN, that was injurious to the organization, is Eastside Community Network physically being in the physical impact area of the Fiat Chrysler plant, the expansion plant, but essentially had no voice right, essentially had no voice or seat at the table because we weren't, the organization isn't technically a resident. But Savannah, I want to punt to you about this expansion and working with residents, especially residents in the impact area, and this idea of bargaining for the common good on the grassroots perspective. What are you seeing? How are people feeling? And is there an opportunity for, do you foresee an opportunity for these residents at ECN to come together with groups like Bargaining for the Common Good and other union organizers to, find some common ground?
Yeah, so definitely, I definitely see a need for collaborative efforts um, for a greater reach. My experience just with working with residents, I do believe it was in 2019, we held within our LEAP work, which is now the LEAP Coalition, but LEAP is our Lower East Side Action Plan. We have, back then it was monthly stakeholder advisory group meetings, and we held one of our community meetings really to focus on what were some of the concerns that residents had within the expansion or related to the expansion itself. And residents really focused on addressing air quality, noise, traffic, and I believe it was jobs. I think was the last one. I may have to get with
Jobs or home
on the
repair.
last one.
Yeah.
Yes. And talk about a turnout at that meeting, right? Residents were 100% engaged. They 100% know and understand what the needs are of, themselves, their own resident, neighborhoods and communities. And they live in this impacted area, right? They're breathing in every single particle of dust or pollution that is going into the air. They see it play out in their own health, in the health of their children, in the health of our seniors. And so I definitely support a collaborative effort. In fact, our LEAP Coalition just finalized an agreement, Donna, if I can share, finalized an agreement to partner with the NAC so that we can begin to, number one, educate the community on not just what's happening, but what was agreed upon. And then the process itself, because a lot of residents don't know or understand the process of the NAC. A lot of residents are, really playing catch up right now and still saying, well, what is a NAC and how do you become a part of it? And how often, right? And so a lot of residents need to understand what that process was and how it actually was, tied to the election in 2016, I believe. So I definitely, I'm all for it. I think that our communities are all for it. And I think that at this point, residents are really looking for, how do we move from talking to really taking that vision to action and putting things to work and really just going to work and getting I don't want to say actions met, but just getting the work done.
Getting the work done. I like that. And hopefully, the work that Jerry is doing and the work that you are doing, especially Jerry's desire to stay in contact with community stakeholders. What does that look like in practicum? Hopefully this is the beginning of a really great partnership and conversation that needs to continue to happen, especially on the East Side in that impact area.
So I'm just going to read a little bit off the website of Bargaining for Common Good, because these 3 of the many points that really really moved me. One of them is go on the offense in your campaign by identifying, exposing, and challenging the real villains, the financial and corporate actors who profit from and increasingly drive policies and actions. And I see us really being able to work together on this, right? engage community allies as partners in issue development and the bargaining campaign. And here we are. So even though I understand this is not a union specific activity, it is an example of you representing both the UAW Ayfield Randolph Institute, working with community members, which you've done for some time. You have, this is not new, but broadening that to work with the Lower East Side Action Plan Coalition to really get into those issue developments. And then the final one is Black History, centering racial justice in your demands, because environmental racism is real. The decision to increase pollution in one place and decrease it in another is significant. And and I'm not necessarily against industrial. I mean, obviously we all like driving cars. We need industrial operations, right? I mean, that's part of our way of life. But there's things that can be done. There are vegetative buffers that can be established. There's air filters that can be placed on buildings. There's investments that can be made in a health fund, health endowment fund, that will help support people above and beyond all of this. And certainly the houses that are being impacted, we have to look at that. I was just reading that, in the demolition contracts in Detroit, and this is unrelated, one of the contractors was fined for dumping asbestos on Beneteau Street. It's like, get out of here. This is true in the news today, right? So, yeah, and so all of those demolitions that took place, did we have even equity in that? Savannah, you wanted to,
I misspoke earlier. The four concerns were air quality, noise, traffic, and related to stormwater, not jobs.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Savannah.
So anyway, so I'm really excited about working with you. I think the community is going to be excited. All of the community members, when we reached out to them and said, okay, as a coalition, we just want to make sure everybody's bought in. People were super excited about working with the NAC and working with you to really bring about shared power and, just try to fix some of what is broken in the process. And, I think everybody has to acknowledge you guys didn't have enough time, and that was not caused by you.
Right. All right. Thank you, Savannah and Jerry, for joining us. Of course, we will have to have you back and get an update on how that work is coming. We're excited for this budding partnership and what it will look like in practicum. Listen, if you have topics that you want discussed on Authentically Detroit, you can hit us up on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Authentically Detroit, or email us at authenticallydetroit@gmail.com. We want to shout out one of our listeners who sent a couple of stories to us last week that didn't quite make it on the podcast, but we thank you so much for engaging with us. Anyway, I didn't get permission to use his name, so I won't use his name. But everybody who hits us up on the socials, everybody who tags us when somebody is asking about the must listen to podcast in the city, thank you. Every single day we get a note or a tag, and we really, really appreciate it. I want to shout out PBS's mention of the Detroit COVID Memorial, specifically Rochelle Riley, who led that effort and did an amazing job, and is now thinking about what a more permanent or recurring memorial would look like here in the city of Detroit. Shout out to former Speaker, Michigan House Speaker Lee Chatterfield, for being fired from the CEO job after 1 week. Shout out to you for not being qualified and taking that job in the first place. Shout out to you for not wanting lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender people to have a right to live and a right to have homes, and I'm thankful that his character is being broadcasted and revealed for everyone to see. I also want to shout out Megan McCain for reminding us of how gross of a human being she is by complaining she doesn't even know when she can get the vaccine. Megan McCain, co-host of The View, don't know when I will be able to get the vaccine. I know it's not Detroit related, but it's such a gross character trait to have, that inherent privilege and the nastiness that comes along with it. Some good shout outs. We want to shout out New Detroit Inc. for bringing on Jody Raines as their new chief operating officer. That is some great news. We'll actually be interviewing, Bridge Detroit will be interviewing Mike Rafferty, CEO of New Detroit, and Jody Raines next week. And so be on the lookout for that. And today also marks 1 year since the murder of Ahmaud Arbery. And we have there are three people in custody who are to stand trial for his murder. So our thoughts and prayers are still with his family. It's only been a year. And ECN, Jamon Jordan, Daniel Baxter, and are partnering together on a Black History event set to take place. Donna, when is it set to take place? Thursday, February 25th at 6 p.m. Go to the ECN, Eastside Community Network Facebook page to opt in on that event and get all of the information you need to join in on that event. If you know Jamon Jordan, if you know Daniel Baxter, and if you know the kind of events that ECN puts on, you don't want to miss this one. Daya, you got any shout outs?
Absolutely. In a related move to Jody leaving, and I'm super excited because I'm on the board and executive committee of New Detroit, so I get to keep working with her. But also I want to shout out Melissa Jamaski, who is a longtime program officer at the EARP Foundation, who got promoted to Vice President of Programs and the Senior Program Officer, Great Lakes. So congratulations, because there's a great team at EARP. I want to shout out the Mack Avenue Business Association and also the strategy group that is working to revitalize Mack Avenue. Angela Brown Wilson, Ian McCain, and Kanishka, right? Anyway, Kanishka, Wigaranthu.
Oh, Donna, don't try it. Don't try it. It's like me pronouncing Savannah's last name. Don't do it.
I'm trying to pronounce people's last names, but I have to practice that one. So, there's a lot of Black-owned businesses. I'm just going to try to identify a couple of them. DC's Alabama Style Chicken. It is it's under construction, but reopening soon, but it's got good Black-owned. The Pop Culture Vegan Cafe, formerly Veganini's, the only all-vegan restaurant on Mack and one of the only ones on the East Side. Cornerstone Bar and Grill, a neighborhood bar featuring
one of my favorite spots.
Right, especially cocktails and public and private events, including dancing and game days. Remember we used to go out dancing? Ben's Barbershop, family-owned barbershop, temporarily closed due to the pandemic. House of Zen, these are all Black-owned businesses. A family-owned medical dispensary.
M&D Pharmacy.
Oh, we're not there yet. Harry's Barbershop, family-owned barbershop, serving the corridor for over 3 decades. M&D Pharmacy is a woman-owned business, and a woman-owned pharmacy, as is Tobe and C Senior Daycare. It's a nonprofit senior daycare, Kids Day in Learning, women-owned daycare. Images by Chris Barbershop. It's a family-owned barbershop. We have lots of barbershops. Ladies, catch up. Just Us Cutting Barbershop is another family-owned barbershop.
Yep, Sir John's.
Dare to Be Nude Day Spa. It's a woman-owned personal care services. You can get waxes, you can get massages, facials, and you don't have to be nude, but it's Dare to Be Nude. And I didn't know about this place, but it's
amazing.
News. The Barbershop, which, you'll never forget that name. It's another family-owned barbershop, as is Epic Cuts. J. Kelly's Grooming, another family-owned barbershop. Energy for Life Health Food Store, which is holistic health food, goods, and services. Loving Care Helpers, a woman-owned daycare. Sir John's Barbershop, family-owned barbershop.
John. Shout out to you.
Tiana is a boutique and beauty salon. Detroit Lash and Brow. Who knew about that? Eyelash and eyebrow boutique. Tamara's All About Kids, a woman-owned daycare. And then, of course, we have several churches, and the 42nd, it's the 42nd Street Men's Apparel, upscale men's retail boutique. So
yes,
we have
shout out to Everett Tate.
That's right, Everett Tate. We have some Black-owned businesses in our community, and
Audio Wave Network. Shout out to Audio Wave Network on Mack Avenue.
On Mack Avenue, but relocating next month to 4401 Connor, which is our headquarters. So we're going to be doing podcasts there as soon as it's safe for us to congregate. Anyway, these are a lot of businesses that we want to ID. I also want to shout out Jenna Harper Kirkland, who is our fall 2020 Prosper Us grad and pitch competition winner, who also won second place in the Michigan Women Forward 2021 pitch competition for Johnson and Harper Creations product, the Torso Sweatband. It's a
That
really
if
cool
if
concept.
this is the same Miss Harper Kirkland that I taught her kids in Youth on the Edge of Greatness back in the day, I'm talking like 2010, 2009.
Yeah,
Wow.
well, I'm just excited. I would support Black businesses, small Black businesses, where people are putting people to work, putting money in their pockets, and it's important that even as we, are doing the Amazon shopping and carting and Uber eating, that we remember to patronize these businesses that are really the hallmark of our community and really make everything safe for us because they've been working hard. So
I love it. Any shout outs, Savannah or Jerry?
I just want to, just speak on part of the coalition, the Bog Center, who partnered with us when we did the event to celebrate Martin Luther King birthday, to introduce the community to community benefit, Freedom Feeder Growers and Jim and the many others, the People's Platform, that without their fight to get it on the ballot, that we also participated in, we wouldn't be at the table. We didn't get what we wanted, but we got a platform. We need to do the work needed to amend the platform to better suit the needs of the community. And so I just look forward to working with you guys and thank you for this opportunity to share with the rest of the Lower East Side of Detroit. Thank you.
yes, well, I will say this. Linda Campbell of the Detroit People's Platform was my first boss even before I finished college. She encouraged me to finish college. So much of who and how I am professionally is a credit to her leadership and example. So I want to acknowledge Detroit People's Platform and their unwavering and unflinching advocacy for doing what's right in our community.
Savannah, any shout outs?
Yeah, I'd like to shout out our LEAP Coalition. Very excited again about this new partnership to collaborate with the Neighborhood Advisory Council. And really, I just want to shout out all of our Black kings and queens and those that are coming up in the making. This is our time, right? We got 28 days of February, but we got a whole year to just celebrate our Blackness. And so, yeah, I just shout out to everybody.
All right. Thank you all so much for being here. And you listener, we thank you for listening and we want you to catch the wave.